Good morning, Miss. The article we select is the title The Red Sea Crisis Ramification for the Vessel Operation, Shipping Network and the Maritime Supply Chain, which written by the notable Paralympics and the Karenans in 2024. It looks at how the conflict in the Red Sea, triggered by the Hamas-Israel war and the Houthi rebel attack, has disrupted one of the world's most important shipping routes. The study explains how the vessels are being rerouted via the Cape of Good Hope, which increase the travel time, the fuel use, and also the insurance cost. Topic is highly relevant because it's a real-world case that shows how geopolitics can directly impact the global trade and also the supply chain resilience. Before we go through our content today, let me introduce our member first. The first one is the Dash Shikai, and the second one is Chua Chongbing, and the third one is Lee Chongkai, and the next of the Chongkai is the Law En Hee, and last which is me, Wong Jinsen.
Later.
Thank you, Jinsen. Now I'm going to talk about the research problem and aim. In late 2023, the attacks near the Red Sea pushed many ships to avoid the Suez Canal and instead sail the longer way around Africa. The article's aim is to explain what the shift means for ship routes, total cost paid by the carriers and shippers, delivery time for cargo, and the wider supply chain that depend on predictable ocean transport. The authors also remind us that the situation was still changing in early 2024, so the discussion captures early evidence and immediate impacts rather than final outcomes. The next is the methodology. This is an editorial synthesis, not the new experiment or model. The authors brings together up-to-date figures from industry sources and major news outlets and use them to build a clear picture. They also make it simple, transparent estimate to show how extra distance and time translate into more fuel burn and higher emission. Throughout, the analysis stays focused on three things. The first is how routes and network choice change. The second is how price move, including freight rates, insurance, and the surcharge carriers add. And the third one is how these shifts created supply chain effect like delay and pressure on the inventory plans. Now I'm going to talk about the key findings. Many ships switch to the Cape of Good Hope route to avoiding switch to reduce risk to crew and cargo. Because the trip were longer, vessel burn more fuel, which raised emission and push up the operating costs. Price move quickly, freight rates climb, and war risk insurance become more expensive. And carriers add new surcharges to cover the extra distance and delays. These transport delays shows up in the factories too. Some in the Europe had to slow or pause because key parts arrived late. A fewer shippers test rail across Eurasia or air-sea combination to save time. But those options are niche, have limited space and usually cost more. At the same time, containers ends up in wrong place, creating short-term shortage in Asia and making it harder to secure equipment for export. Last is the conclusion. In the short term, companies face higher costs and less reliable schedule as ships sail farther, and network took time to readjust. Looking ahead, this impact may ease if the disruption does not drag on, because new vessels entering service add capacity and help stabilize price. If the crisis is not prolonged, those prices are unlikely to stay very high. The key lesson is preparedness. Build flexible, resilient supply chain with vega roads and modes so you can switch quickly when trouble hits. Alternative to exist, but each have limits. So the manager must keep balancing cost, time, and risk as conditions change. Now I'm gonna pass to the next presenter.
In my section, I'll be sharing about the impact that the article have highlighted and also we strongly agree with. First, the article highlight the impact of the Red Sea crisis. This is because the Red Sea crisis have reduced the trade through the Suez Canal. The shipping line have opted to reroute their vessel through the Cape of Good Hope, which a longer voyage will bring a longer sailing distance and higher sailing speed and higher sailing time for the shipping line. And the details of a different of the distance, speed, and time have been shown at the table as provided by the article. So in the table, we can see that the impact of the cap routing on the distance, the sailing time, and also the speed for a typical Asia, not Europe, Wiki Lightning service. So first we can see that the sailing distance has increased in almost 30%, and the sailing speed has increased by 6%. The total sailing time increased by 21%. And the last it also talk about the required number of vessels for wiki service. This is because shipping line will now require for more flight capacity to transport the same quantity of goods in the same time interval and poor frequency due to longer distance and sailing time. As a result, this all contribute to increase the total bunker consumption and the ship emission. Secondly, the article also talking about the production reduction caused by the Red Sea crisis. The longer transit time associated with the Cape Road have now generated some short-term impact for shippers, such as will impose them the higher floating inventories and delay deliveries. And this higher unreliability of the global logistics will particularly affect the industry that highly rely on the JIT just-in-time and make-to-order MTO delivery and production system. In fact, the cost maker like the Tesla, Tata Motors, and Volkswagen, which get part and material from Asia, have to slow down or stop their production. And why they are the most affected industry is because the problem is that now the parts and components that involved in the production process will have different lead time and delivery schedule, meaning that they will need to temporarily stop the production until all the inputs are arrived to allow the production process of the end product. Either it will force them to change their production planning and eventually implement small batch of production. However, it will prevent economy of scale. In the end, the article also highlight the economic impact of the Red Sea crisis on the country, especially for the owner of Suez Canal, Egypt. The profits of Suez Canal is always an important revenue stream for Egypt, which traditionally bring it around 10 billion US dollar a year. For example, in the financial year of 2022-2023, it brings Egypt around 9.4 billion of US dollar, representing 2% of the country's GDP. However, due to the Red Sea crisis, the ship passed through the Suez Canal has significantly dropped. And thus, the SCA reported that about 40% less toll revenues in the first 2 weeks of 2024 compared to the same period in 2023. Similarly, the report of the Honest Insurance also stated that the actually suffered an estimated loss of $7 billion in this crisis. As a result, this escalated the country's economic challenge, including a growing public debt and inflation peaking at 30%. Emphasizing the important relationship between the international transport and the country economy.
The article by Notable Lamidas and Kulinan 2024 provides valuable insight into the Red Sea crisis. There are several areas where I disagree or find the discussion incomplete. I will highlight 3 points, each supported by recent study and also the report. The first point is about the port impacts. The author mainly focused on vessel operation and sailing schedules, but they give little attention to port-level consequences. In reality, some transshipment hubs such as Salalah and Jebel Ali face congestion and equipment imbalance during the crisis. Research by Yap and Yang, 2024, shows that container port call pattern shifted significantly, creating uneven pressure across the port. This evidence suggests the article underestimates the heterogeneity of port impacts. My second point is disagreement with the methodology. The article relies heavily on qualitative review and the policy interpretation. While useful, this approach lacks predictive power for future sort. A more robust method will be network modeling or empirical traffic analysis. For example, Lopez-Diaz 2024 used ICE data to quantify traffic disruption in the Red Sea, offering stronger empirical evidence. Other scholars propose network robustness model to test how not ferries affect the global connectivity. This shows that a purely qualitative approach is insufficient. The third issue is about the assumption of fast supply chain recovery. The author suggests that rerouting around the Cape of Good Hope helped the system stabilize relatively quickly. However, data from IMF 2024 and UNCTAD 2024 indicate that the disruption persists well into mid-2024. For instance, capacity through the Suez Canal dropped by 70%, while arrival via the Cape increased by 89%. Such figures reveal that recovery was much slower than the article implies. In summary, I disagree with the article on the 3 counts. It underestimates the port level impact, relied too much on qualitative analysis, overstated the recovery speed. This gap highlights the need for a more comprehensive and data-driven assessment of the Red Sea crisis.
Thank you, Chongbin. Now I'm going to talk about the recommendations for key stakeholders in international transport. Now first, let's look about shipping lines and carriers. The carriers should keep the routes flexible, switching between the Suez Canal and Cape of Good Hope as risks change. Building buffer fleets with extra vessels can help to absorb the delay and keep the schedule reliable. This ensures stability even during major disruption. And now the second one is for shippers. The shippers need to diversify by using multiple carrier and routes instead of relying on just one. They can also adopt intermodal solutions like rail for valuable goods, sea air for urgent shipment. This can create resilience and reduce vulnerability in supply chain. And the third one is the port and terminal operators. The ports should strengthen their role as transshipment hubs, especially in places like Tangier Med or Algeciras. Expanding hinterland links such as rail and inland depots will help them to manage new cargo flow caused by the duty tolls. This will keep goods moving smoothly to markets. And the last one is the government and regulators. The governments must invest in alternative corridors like the India Middle East Europe route or overland rail. They should also co-fund port expansion in West Africa and the Mediterranean to handle the diverted trade. These steps will secure safer and more resilient supply chain. Now, let me pass to the next presenter. Thank you.
There are 4 key areas where future research could build on this study. First, a long-term analysis of reloading via the Cape of Good Hope to see how extended detours affect the schedules, the freight costs, and the trade competitiveness over several years. Secondly, a comparative study of choke point disruption, for example, comparing the Red Sea crisis with the 2021 Suez Canal blockage to identify the common risk pattern and also recovery the strategy. The next one, which is explore the root of the AI-powered maritime crisis response system to use a predictive modeling and real-time route optimization to reduce delay and financial loss during crisis. Finally, evaluating the effectiveness of multinational naval patrol in the Mandab Strait to assess how the joint security operation help detect the attack and keep the vessel safe and restore the trade confidence.
To conclude, our review of notable Helelambis and Kulinan 2024 highlight that the Red Sea crisis has reshaped the maritime transport on 3 critical levels. Now I will talk about the 3 critical levels. The first, as the vessel level, the longer voyage around the Cape of Good Hope increased the fuel cost and also the emission. At the network level, the carrier restructured the service, skip port, and face capacity reallocation. At the supply chain level, the shipper experienced the higher freight rate, longer lead time, and the greater uncertainty in inventory management. However, as we discussed in our critique, the article overlooks some important aspects, including the differentiated the impact on port, the need for quantitative modeling, the slower than expected recovery of supply chain, and also the serve environmental consequences. Addressing this gap gives us a more complete understanding of the crisis. In short, the Red Sea disruption reminds us that the maritime network are highly interconnected. The instability in one choke point can ripple through the entire global economy. Building resilience, improving risk management, and also integrating sustainability will be essential for the shipping industry in the future.